the bottom 4 play-ins?
Yeah, there's a play-in. There's 5 for each league, a play-in for each league, and then from there.
All right, lock in for about 2 hours.
It's not going to take that long.
All right, we're all set.
All right, you can start it up, Josh.
Why am I starting it up?
You always start. You're the host.
Okay. All right. Welcome back to another edition of Bracketville. I am Josh McCauley, joined by Alex Levitt, Mike Niddle, and Matt Stromsky. We got a good one for you guys today, put together by Matt, and I will turn it over to him to take us through it. Matt?
All right, cool. Thanks, Josh. Good thing you led that off there. I couldn't have done that myself. So essentially, the bracket today is cities that should have a professional sports franchise. I held it to North America. I didn't think that going outside North America and putting any teams in Europe made logical sense. I don't think it will happen for quite some time, at the very least.
Stop. I think me laughing drowned out what you were saying, so I don't think that anything was heard.
Okay, I'll just start over then.
Yep.
All right.
That was so funny. Oh, God.
I
thought it was fine, but yeah. So what we're doing here is we have it's 20 teams, 5 for each of the big 4 leagues: MLB, NBA, NHL, and NFL. Cities that currently do not have a professional franchise for these leagues, that we think, or that I think, should have a team, or the most likely ones to see potential expansion to their respective cities. I held it to North America because I didn't think that anything outside of North America, Canada, Mexico, United States, made logistical sense. I don't think that any of these leagues are going to Europe on a full-time basis for quite a while. And then you can kind of base this off of whatever you'd like in terms of population, popularity of the sport, and whether it makes logistical sense. Obviously, some of these cities had these teams at some point, and that contributes to them being on the bracket. So we will just start up with the 4 play-ins. I'm going to start at the 16 seed, Portland and Brooklyn for Major League Baseball, 2 that aren't very, very likely to happen. Portland will start up there. They have one of the kind of strongest small sport fan bases. The women's soccer team leads the league in attendance, and their MLS team is always top 2 or 3 in attendance. They also have the Trailblazers, so they're a popular sports city, but really not a big investor base, and it hasn't really shown much interest in the city so far. And then Brooklyn's obviously the nostalgic choice. The Dodgers were there, from the 1800s until 1957 when they moved to Los Angeles. 2.5 million people in the borough, so they fill that role of having a large population, but obviously territorial rights would have to be waived by the Yankees and the Mets for it to happen. And there's always the issue of, the Dodgers fans have been gone for a while, and would they embrace a team that is not the Brooklyn Dodgers? So we will start up the voting there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak. I think Portland would be a fine choice. I think you have a nice rivalry with the Mariners. You have just an extra West Coast team. I'm actually going to speak against Brooklyn more because I think it's such a horrible idea. Like you mentioned, Matt, anyone who grew up with the Dodgers in Brooklyn is dying off.
Bernie Sanders is still alive. That's pretty much the last one.
You got one. And honestly, I was thinking about this earlier when I was looking at the bracket. If you took 100 MLB fans ages 16 and under, how many of them even know the Dodgers were in Brooklyn? 50, 60? To me, putting a team back in Brooklyn and not calling them the Dodgers would not make a lot of sense. Just from a logistical perspective, where are you putting a stadium? Where Ebbets Field used to be is now an apartment complex. So you're really looking at put it next to JFK or nowhere. Territorial rights are an issue. There's already so much traffic over there. And I don't think 3 teams in New York would make a lot of sense. So I'm voting for Portland just off the basis that I think Brooklyn is a horrible idea.
All right. One of you 2.
For me, I think it'd be tough, as Josh was kind of mentioning, as it was, to even have a team in Brooklyn in the first place. And he laid it out pretty well there. But in terms of like why Portland deserves it in the good sense overall, not only is it a good sports town, and we already know it has good fans with the Trailblazers, with the Timbers, with some of the other low market teams too. It's also a wealthy area. It's well educated, apparently. I looked that up too, and it has plenty of people there with almost 2.5 million people there. So I think that would be a helpful spot, and it's not really competing against any specific team. And as Josh, you mentioned right off the top too, it would create a good rivalry with Seattle. So it's actually very compelling to have a team there, and so I'm going to put that as my team through.
All right, it's 2-0. Any comments, Alex?
Ooh. I'm just thinking about this. I do think that there's some legitimacy to baseball in Portland. I mean, the Mariners are very popular here. I'm just trying to think of what the scenario would be where Brooklyn somehow gets this team and it works. I mean, Josh, what would you think about what if they did a Hornets? What if
I'm not sure if the Dodgers would give it up.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the Dodgers have almost as much history in LA as they did in Brooklyn. So it just wouldn't make any sense to me. Yeah, I think 2 teams in Brooklyn is enough. I mean, you got to remember when the Dodgers first went there, Brooklyn was its own city. I'm stalling because Levitt's frozen. So that is something to remember as well. I don't see any way that
Dodgers
could happen.
In LA change their name? Would that be too sacrilegious?
Levitt, you're coming in bits and pieces here, so Fitz, we're going to have to edit this.
Yeah.
Levitt? Okay, he's gone. All right, just edit
my
he's,
God.
He's there. He's just his connection isn't great.
All right, he's gone. No, it'd be sacrilege. It'd be total sacrilege. It would never happen. There are 10 cities ahead of Brooklyn to get a team, and Brooklyn's not a city. So yeah.
Yeah, so it was more of a sentimental. So it's interesting you guys kind of went down the logical route there, because sentimentally, I think Brooklyn, would be a great place for baseball, but logically, maybe not. So we will try and wait for Alex here. I can be the deciding vote. If not, we'll move down to the next play-in for the NHL. Hamilton against Saskatoon. Hamilton.
How do you put it on your bracket and don't even know how to say it?
Quiet. So Hamilton, they've actually tried to get a team there on 3 different occasions. There's one investor that's very interested in doing it. He's tried to buy a couple of teams. He tried to buy the Penguins actually and move them there, but the NHL didn't want hockey outside of leaving Pittsburgh, so they kind of squashed that deal. The positives are, they do have, I believe, an arena ready. It is a hockey crazy area. The negatives are it's very close in proximity to Buffalo. It's about 50 miles from Buffalo, about 70 miles from Toronto. So there would be territorial rights, obviously, because those teams might not want to lose fans, and it would be, tough just geographically, but logistically and just from a hockey standpoint, I think that they'd be very successful and have a very strong fan base. Against Saskatoon, is a town. Saskatoon. They actually almost had the Blues move there back in the 80s, but the investment group did not have the money for it. It's not a huge city, but it's hockey crazy. It's kind of, it's not really near any of the other NHL teams in Canada. Obviously, hockey is crazy up there. They actually have a 15,000 seat arena for a junior team. So there's definitely interest in hockey in the area. They've looked into it in the past. It's definitely a place people are thinking about going. And this kind of fits the hockey will succeed everywhere in Canada mantra. So Hamilton or Saskatoon.
It's really not that hard to pronounce.
Yeah.
What did you say, Josh?
I said it's really not that hard to pronounce.
Saskatoon.
Oh, Levitt's back.
Levitt, you there?
What's up?
Ah, there you are. All right.
I just shut down Photoshop and a whole bunch of other things that I was running in the background.
For me, it's again the tough thing of adding in some of these towns and cities that have the territorial rights, if we're going based on where would it be nice to have a team and like where would it be interesting to, just like the Brooklyn Dodgers would be nice to have back, Hamilton would be nice, but it's again just a matter of it would be tough with having the Maple Leafs and the Sabres there, but it is one of the more densely populated areas in Canada. So, and I think that's a huge part of having a professional team there is, do you have a lot of fans available? Can you fill a stadium? And do you have a stadium already available? And there is one already done in Hamilton. So I'll have them move along, even though it'll be a little tough with the other teams, all because this is all fake anyway. So it's great.
So Saskatoon is really tiny. It's like 250,000 people. But Saskatchewan is the only major Canadian province that doesn't have an NHL team. Sorry, New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island, but they're the only one that doesn't. So it does make sense from a logistics standpoint to have a team in between the Flames and the Jets in terms of moving across Canada. That said, it's a really tiny market, and the NHL hates tiny markets. That's why Hartford didn't work, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. That's why Quebec City didn't work. I look at Hamilton, though, and that would be really tough to have 3 NHL teams within, 150 miles of each other. I don't think the Sabres would like it. I don't think the Leafs would really hate it. So I will go to Saskatoon just to make it interesting, but I don't think either one of them would make a great NHL city.
All right, love it. So it's tied. Do you need
Well, no, I can go on this one. This is tough because Hamilton's interesting because that's the guy that tried to buy so many teams, right? Did we already go over this?
He tried to buy the Penguins at one point, but part of the deal was that he had to keep them in Pittsburgh. And,
right. Yeah. So I mean, it's possible, but at the same time, Quebec, is kind of got robbed of their team. So, and they're probably more potent hockey city than somewhere that can just drive to the Leafs an hour and a half. So I'm going to go with Quebec.
Wait, that's not an option.
Is it Hamilton or Saskatoon?
Hamilton, we're doing a play-in. I thought it was you were matching up either one of those versus the other.
No. The play-in first.
Okay. I mean, it's got to be Hamilton then.
Okay.
Because at least that's come close to getting a team.
Sorry, Saskatoon. I tried, guys. I tried.
Yeah.
No, I can't buy it to Saskatoon. I was just ignoring that, honestly.
Okay. All right. So the next one is the 15th today. I actually screwed up here. It's supposed to be Kansas City, not St. Louis. So just ignore.
Really?
Dumbasser. Yeah. Why? Do you want it to be St. Louis?
I would rather have Kansas City, St. Louis over Louisville. I don't think Louisville has any claim to a team. St. Louis and Kansas City both had teams, a couple teams.
Relax. So
I'm just saying.
Well, I'm going to give an explanation here. So Louisville is a major city with an NBA-ready arena where they would dominate the market. It would be very similar to Oklahoma City. The big downside, obviously, is that it's a college town area. Louisville's men's basketball team already plays there. So would there be a market for it? It's tough to say. But like I said, they have what would be one of the nicer NBA arenas. It's in a basketball-crazy state, in a basketball-crazy area with no other major professional sports teams around. So they could potentially grab that market and hold on to it and create something similar to what the Oklahoma City Thunder have in Oklahoma. Up against Kansas City, because Kansas City has, I guess it could be St. Louis too, but we're going to go with Kansas City because St. Louis is later down in the bracket. They have an NBA-ready arena with the Sprint Center. It hosts a lot of college basketball. There's interest, obviously, with the Royals and the Chiefs there. I know that there used to be a team there as well, but it just seems like the type of city in the Midwest that could support an NBA team, and they could play in either conference, which is a big plus for the league. They don't have to worry about conference alignment. So you guys can kind of choose there. Would we go Kansas City or would we go Louisville?
Levi, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. I mean, it's tough. It's two really good college basketball cultures. I think I'll go Louisville because I feel like it's more realistic. I don't actually know if it's like more deserving, but I can see it just because of Yum Brand and they want to get everything that there is to get in Louisville, Kentucky.
All right. Next.
I think Louisville would be also an interesting move because there isn't any professional sports teams anywhere there. So I think the closest is what, the Pacers, and that's at least over 100 miles away. So
yeah, the Pacers might have a say in a potential NBA franchise in
but
Louisville.
it's plenty far away that it's.
Yeah.
I mean, they might be close enough to have a say, but I'm sure it's plenty far away that they can build their own fan base out of what is available there. I think Kansas City, they've tried the NBA before and it didn't really work out. So it'd be kind of interesting to see if Louisville could actually get something going. I know it's really a college town, but why not, right?
Yep. So Louisville looks like it's winning that one. Josh, you said that Louisville was a terrible idea, so I'm going to let you have a chance to expand on that.
Yeah, I mean, that was against St. Louis. I still think I would have gone Kansas City here. Number one, it's either 2 or 3 on the NBA's list of which city's next. It's Seattle, number 1, and then some order Vegas and then Kansas City. The Kings left because of their owner wanting to move to the West Coast, not because the city couldn't support it. I think it'd be great. You already have 2 other professional teams there. You have a sports complex. You have an established fan base. Versus, I look at Louisville had an ABA team that folded because they could not draw fans. I know that was 40 years ago, but hey, Kentucky Colonels folded. And I really don't think an NBA team starting off would have much of a chance against Louisville basketball. I know Yum Brand is a big draw, but I would have to say Kansas City, for me, would have won that one.
All right, so Kansas City will move on in the 15th.
No, it will not.
What?
Didn't they both vote for Louisville?
Oh, yeah, Louisville moves.
Louisville.
I'm an idiot. Okay, so Louisville moves on. That is surprising there. I'm really struggling here. The last play-in is the NFL. 2 teams that recently lost their franchise, St. Louis and San Diego. Obviously, now both those teams are in LA. St. Louis had the Rams for quite some time. San Diego, the Chargers for quite some time. In San Diego's case, Alex will know a lot more about this, but in San Diego's case, it was more Dean Spanos wanted a lot of money from the city. The city didn't want to shell it out. And then Stan Kroenke obviously moved, or what's his name? Whoever the Rams owner is obviously moved out to LA because he saw it as a potential to bring the Rams back to LA. He saw it as a potential big investment for his own wallet. So what do you guys think here? Would it be St. Louis or would it be San Diego getting the NFL back just a few years after losing it?
Josh.
I don't know.
Okay, I'll go. I'm gonna go with San Diego. So, San Diego. I don't know if it's more likely, but maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I guess that really depends on the heart of Dean Spanos. And his willingness to give up, and whether they make him give up the LA market, which they could. Because there's no future there for that team, and they belong in San Diego. People hate them in LA. They think they belong in San Diego. People in San Diego obviously think they belong in San Diego, don't like them in LA. So it's a team with no fan base, no home really. St. Louis, they could get a team conceivably, but like, is St. Louis today really more deserving than San Antonio or something? St. Louis is a bigger market, but the market doesn't, money has kind of been leaving that market. You can't go by how they were attending the Rams games because they sucked forever. So I don't really go by that. But San Diego would just be a hit, I think.
I'm going to go St. Louis. I think it's a better sports market. We know how finicky California fans are. You've obviously got the Cardinals there already. You got the Blues. You know how rabid those fan bases are. And I personally think the Chargers should go back to San Diego, so I would like them to stay off the table. So I'll go St. Louis. This one's honestly a toss-up, though.
For me, I'm also going to go St. Louis. I think that just the city as a whole, I think part of it has to do with the fact that I've never been to San Diego, so I don't fully know it. Like going to St. Louis and actually being there and seeing it all and seeing the fan bases that they've had there, there's more potential for it there than it is in San Diego, because I feel like in San Diego they can be there for years and just live there and nobody would really care. I feel like. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, my computer froze and I thought you were done. Continue.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Josh mentioned that you don't want a team in San Diego if it's not the Chargers, but who says this is not expansion teams in the city? It's cities that should have a professional sports franchise. So in my view, it was the Chargers in San Diego. Like I want the Chargers I don't want another team in San Diego. That, you know what I'm saying?
Okay,
does that change your argument?
That's fair. I'm still going to go with St. Louis. I'll change my reasoning. When I think of California sports, San Diego, and I'm sorry if there's any San Diegoans or whatever listening to this, it's the third city. It's LA, San Francisco, San Diego, and I'll even lump them in with Sacramento, and then Oakland, I guess. Actually, Oakland would be above San Diego for me. So if I just think about the power of that market in that state, it'd be St. Louis. So that's my reasoning there.
All right. So it looks like San Diego moved on.
Nope.
No, St. Louis.
Fuck, dude, I'm terrible at this.
You got it, buddy. You got it.
I don't, but all right. So now we have 16. Can I edit this, Josh? Or
can you edit the bracket?
Yeah, once I've started it.
Yes.
How do I do
on the right of the matchup, you can click which team won.
No. Can I edit the teams though?
Oh no, you're just gonna have to remember.
All right, cool. You guys are gonna tell me. So we'll go up here. 1 versus 16. We'll start in the MLB quadrant. It was random. I did MLB as the 1 seed. The MLB was going to be the 1. Basketball was going to be 2. The 3 seed was NFL and 4 seed was NHL. That's just how I ranked them in my head when I was like 5 years old. So I just went off of that, and then the rest of it was fairly random. So the 1 seed is Montreal against the 16 seed Portland. Obviously, we went over Portland earlier. They're not the most likely, but it would be a pretty cool expansion, a West Coast team, natural rival with the Mariners. Montreal's been there for a while. We actually had Jari Park Stadium in our best, stadiums bracket back in college. And I remember that Montreal had the Expos for how many years? I want to say 35 years. They got there before the Big O opened, and then they left when they went to Washington. There's been a lot of speculation, a lot of talk about a team going up there. The big thing is just finding a stadium site, but it seems like there would be interest in going up there and expanding the league in Canada.
There's 2 reasons why the Expos left. Jeffrey Loria bankrupted them, and the city didn't want to pay for a new stadium because Olympic Stadium was a terrible baseball venue. If they get a new stadium, they're set. It has to be Montreal. Those are the only 2 reasons why they left. And Loria is an idiot, so he ruined the Marlins too. So it's just the stadium. If they get that, they're fine.
Just the fact that the Blue Jays played exhibition games there and they immediately sold out, and the Blue Jays probably haven't sold out. Except for when they went to the playoffs. Except for when they went to the playoffs, regular season games, they never sell out. So for me, that's going to have to show you right there just how passionate of a baseball fan base that Montreal has and how an interest that they'll have. And to compare it to Portland, where, it has other teams, but to get a MLB team back in Portland, in Portland is not as important as getting a MLB team back in Montreal. So I got to go with Montreal there.
Is it decided?
Yeah, Montreal won. Any?
I agree with that. Yeah, Expos.
Okay. All right, so the second Major League Baseball matchup is an interesting one. Two very different cities. The 8th seed is Charlotte, second biggest banking hub in the country. Did not know that until I looked into stuff like that today. They host obviously the Panthers, and they have the Hornets there. So it's a professional sports town. There's no baseball team in the Carolinas, but baseball is very popular down there. There's a lot of college teams that sell really well. There's actually a Carolinas minor league baseball league. And I know Charlotte has a minor league team that has a stadium of about 10,000 people. And I know they do decent. So Charlotte kind of makes sense as a potential, perfect spot for Major League Baseball if they were going to try to get into that area of the country. And then Mexico City obviously is somewhat of an outlier. That would be the first, American professional league to have a full-time team in Mexico. But baseball is probably number 2, I would think, in terms of popularity behind soccer there. If it's going to be a city, it's going to be Mexico City. They play the Mexico City series down there, and it would create a whole new, TV and sponsorship market that the league would really be looking to expand upon as they're losing, interest from people in the United States.
So if the question is where do we think or where would we want it to go? What should we base it on?
Where should they go?
Where should they go? They should go to
or what city should have a professional sports franchise?
I think it would be so interesting to see.
Very vague. I love it.
What'd you say?
I said it's very vague. I love it.
It's very vague. Yeah.
Open to interpretation.
I think
Exactly.
seeing a team in Mexico City would be absolutely unbelievable, honestly. It would be kind of crazy, the logistics of it to make it work, not only for the MLB, but even if it went to the NFL or something like that, because I know they've been talking about it and they've had the games there. I think that the fan base is obviously there when it comes to any sport, whether it be soccer, football, or baseball. They would be invested no matter what. And I find it so interesting and so cool to even the potential of it. Charlotte is and it has been for the last few years, up and coming city, as they like to say. But outside of like the middle of Charlotte, there's not a whole heck of a lot going on. So they already have the other sports teams, but I think that I find it much more intriguing to go to Mexico City than to go to Charlotte.
All right, Mexico City. Anyone else? Who's next?
I guess I'll go.
It's a tough one.
So there's really a couple of things. So number one, MLB obviously is shrinking rapidly. It's kind of become a zombie sport in a way, and especially in certain areas, I would say more than others, certainly where they don't have a team. So putting a new team in, especially in a market where, think about Charlotte, the Hornets. It's such a great basketball, but the Hornets are terrible every year, thanks to MJ. But I mean, like they're just starved for a winner. So if there could be a baseball team there and it could be good, that could be great for MLB, establishing a new market in this country, maybe a new pipeline for American baseball talent. In Mexico, it's I don't know about the security situation there. It'd be tough to have a team that's full time. Well, look, I got a page in front of me, list of armed conflicts in the world. The only one in the Western Hemisphere is in Mexico.
Yeah.
So
Why do you have that on your computer right now?
That's interesting.
for the purposes of this.
Okay. It's an interesting thing to pull up.
All righty then.
Go ahead.
Are you going Charlotte then?
Makes my argument strong. Yes.
All right, so it's tied up, Josh.
Pull out all the stops, baby.
I know Josh was kind of torn on this one, so let's put him on the spot here and make him decide.
I mean, I don't know. Charlotte makes sense because the Carolinas are big summer destination spots, and obviously it's when baseball's playing. It's a big hub for minor leagues. Just in terms of like the popularity of baseball down there, it's huge. Mexico City, we obviously know the size of the fan base down there with the Mexican League, the amount of players of Mexican descent that are in the league. Logistically, it'd be tough. I looked it up. It's 950 miles to the closest MLB city, which is Houston. So you're going to have to be on a Texas road trip to go down there, and a lot of National League teams don't make it out there very often. And elevation-wise, so Denver is a mile, so 5,200 feet. It's 7,700 feet in Mexico City, so it's Coors Field on steroids. So that logistically would be tough. So I will go Charlotte just based off of how difficult it would be to set it up in Mexico City. It would be really cool. I think they draw incredibly well. There's too many logistical issues.
It'd be fun. Imagine if they built a ballpark specifically designed for home runs. Like the anti-Coors.
That would be interesting. So
it would be incredible, but
yeah. So Josh, you mentioned like the distance. Do you think if it was a different city in Mexico, closer to the border, you would have a different opinion? Monterrey, Mexico, which is closer to California. Would you have a different opinion? It's not in here, but
I don't think Monterrey's. I don't know if Monterrey's a big enough city.
Gotcha.
Yeah, if it was right over the border, I forget which city is right over the border from El Paso.
Tijuana or something like that.
Tijuana. Yeah, that's not big enough.
Monterrey
would be Mexico
5
City.
million people.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So Monterey.
So maybe they'd be a better fit, but I know they're very close to San Diego. So I don't know if the Padres would want, with a stadium they already don't fill, would want to pull potential people down there. But
yeah, I would say Tijuana or Monterey would have a better case than Mexico City, but it's a weak case to begin with.
Mexico City is way safer than those places anyway.
You just told us it wasn't.
I know who voted for
Yeah,
Trump.
I know, but that was just to make my argument. In reality, it's actually way safe. If they were going to have one, it would be in Mexico City. It would actually probably be pretty safe compared to
anyway. This next one is fun. I'm interested in
So Quebec City against Hamilton. Two interesting spots. Quebec City obviously had the Nordiques until the 90s. They left. They actually still sell Nordiques gear. I learned this back in middle school and I think maybe in high school that they actually still sell Nordiques gear. They're still very popular there. And a few years ago, you guys can look this up, they built an 18,000 seat state-of-the-art arena in Quebec City with the hopes of attracting an NHL team. They lost out to both Vegas and Seattle, but there's definitely a hunger for it down there, or up there, excuse me. It's more of a French-speaking city, though, so I know that's part of the reason why they haven't gone back there, and it's not a huge city either. Against Hamilton, we talked about it earlier, huge hockey hotbed, huge area of Canada, but it's kind of squished in between both Buffalo and Toronto, and both teams might object to having another team, especially the Maple Leafs, even though Toronto is considered having a second team at times, might consider not wanting another Canadian team so close to them. And Buffalo obviously wouldn't want a team that close to them where people might drive across the border to watch their games. So it's an interesting one. We get two Canadian cities, and then the next one is two American cities for the NHL.
I don't know. I'm going to go with Hamilton. And I'll tell you why. So basically, Quebec. All right. So it's kind of similar to Montreal. I just don't know about the viability long term. Once they're not successful, are you able to bring in these people as fans of the league? Whereas Hamilton, they're already fans of the league. I feel like it makes them much more likely to still drop money on stuff when the team isn't good. So, and I don't know that because, like Stromsky brought up the Nordiques jerseys and stuff, but the thing is, some of that's just an aesthetic. So, I don't know how much I read into that.
It's it's tough to say you shouldn't give a city a second chance when the Nordiques left to give another city a second chance when they moved to Denver. That said, when Vegas and Seattle got picked, they asked Gary Bettman, like, why didn't you go there? And it was pretty vague. First he said It was logistical issues, and then he said it was just because it's only French speaking. So it's kind of clear that the NHL does not want to go back there. I think they're afraid of the small market. So I will go with Hamilton as well, because I think you can give a large market a second chance, like Denver got when the Nordiques moved there. But that small a market, when it failed the first time, it'd be really tough to go back.
So I know I don't have a vote, but I would also agree with that. And the factor, I was reading more into like as the Nordiques, how they did. They started out hot, and then they went into years of being terrible, and then they started recovering play-wise, but then they were also struggling terribly in the financial side of things. And we all know that the finances are probably the most important thing. And so going to that small market again won't work. So you got to go
Wow, a clean sweep. Honestly, I thought that Quebec City would make a run here. They are obviously, there's a very nostalgic feeling.
I mean, one thing I'll say for them, Matt. They were bad because they didn't spend money to build the team. Because at the time, I was looking it up, the Canadian dollar was so weak compared to the U.S. dollar, which is not the case anymore, as far as I know. I mean, who knows now? But
it's still a lot low. It's still a lot lower in value, but it's not as bad.
Yeah, and that's going to make – they're never going to take a team out of Canada, I think, in 2020. But putting one back in, that alone is enough of a deterrent.
No, it's interesting, like I said, too, because of the arena they built. They built a state-of-the-art arena to attract a team, and there's no team.
Yeah, you're never going to make up for, like, what happened anyway, because they got good right before, and then obviously they got their team stolen, and then they ended up being really good. Joe Sakic could have been, future Quebec great, but whatever.
Yeah, I was looking into this a little bit more. In 1991, the Nordiques had the #1 overall pick, and they drafted Eric Lindros, and he made it clear he wouldn't sign there. On the advice of his mother, he refused to sign the contract and began a holdout. Then he was traded to the Flyers for the rights to Peter Forsberg, 2 firsts, and $15 million in US dollars, which almost saved the team. And then they sold it a few years later. But they were absolutely unreal in the first season after the trade. They reached the playoffs for the first time in 6 years. 2 years later, they won the division, and then they left.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they won the cup like a couple years later.
Right.
Yeah. All right, so Hamilton moves on. Interesting, really cool. I didn't even realize that they were a potential expansion and how much they looked into it until earlier today. Another one with a lot of nostalgia is Hartford. The Whalers obviously started off playing in Boston as the Boston Whalers, moved down to Hartford, had Gordie Howe at one point in time. They still have an arena there. It's pretty old. They'd have to build a new one if they were to bring a team back. It's obviously in between Boston and New York, but it's actually one of the most popular, defunct franchises probably in the world. I think the Hartford Whalers fan club. They travel to an NHL game every year. They still kind of have this nostalgia there. They have the Hartford Whale or the Connecticut Whale for the NWHL, National Women's Hockey League team, which pretty much stole their logo. So there still is kind of this interest in the team there. Of defunct franchises, they actually sell the most merchandise according to Bloomberg on Fanatics. Of all the defunct franchises that they sell in there, their top sales. So there's definitely a history there and still probably some interest. How much interest is interesting. And then you go to Houston. Obviously, hockey down in Texas is not well known, but there's certainly somewhat of an appetite for it. They filled the Cotton Bowl for the Winter Classic, which was 85 to 90,000 strong. They have a team in Dallas, which does fairly well. And Houston is just a big town. They already have 3 professional sports teams. Hockey's the one missing. The owner of the Rockets has shown interest in bringing an NHL team down there, and he's actually talked to Gary Bettman about it. So is it kind of go down south and follow some potential, money in a big state like Texas, or do you bring back one of the more nostalgic franchises, that hockey and sports has ever seen, and go to Hartford where there are no major professional sports teams right now?
Oh, go ahead, Nettle.
I'm going to start this since I live here.
Yeah, and Michael is very close.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Since I live right next to Hartford. The Whalers are still talked about like they were here 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It's nonstop. Even at work, they talk about it a lot because that's what a lot of the people who have been there for years. That's what they know. That's what they grew up on is the Hartford Whalers. And coming to this area, the issue would be when you're comparing it to Houston. There's not as many people. Obviously, there's about 1 million in the general vicinity, I'd say. And then when it comes to Houston, there's 4 million in that metro area.
A lot more.
Oh, just kidding. A lot more. So there is a lot of intrigue here about it. I don't see how it would be feasible to hold a team in Hartford because I think a lot of the fans in the Hartford area will either go to Boston or they'll go to New York. It's already so split in the middle that to have another team just coming back to Hartford would be tough. And so that's why in Houston, you can garner your own fan interest. You have a in-state rivalry already with the Stars. I think it will work out better down there.
The NHL will never go back to Hartford.
No shot.
They just won't. I disagree a little with what you said, Nettle. I think the fans would show up. The biggest issue is the sponsorship money. Money's leaving Hartford faster than it's going there. I think the Bruins would have to give away some territorial rights, and I don't think they will. There's an AHL team there, the Wolfpack, that does moderately successful. But okay, Nettle's saying no. I think they get outdrawn by the Yard Goats, which is the Rockies AA affiliate. So it just shows you
the thing with the Wolfpack is they've switched around between the AHL and the ECHL, so a lot of people
that would do it.
They're interested.
It's confusing.
Yeah,
Say that again?
would do it.
It's confusing if you're not playing the same teams every year.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think the fans would come. The sponsorship money's not there, and you want to talk about a small market team. I mean, we just talked about it with Quebec City. The NHL was burned once. I don't think they would be burned again. They will never touch Hartford. Houston has an owner, has a building, has the fans, has all the other big sports, and has the sponsorship money. It's an easy sell.
Well, if Hartford wins and gets a team back, then we get to say we broadcasted at an NHL arena. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, Hartford is pretty small. I mean, which city should have it? I kind of nostalgically would vote for Hartford, not that it matters, because Houston will, but Hartford should. They probably deserve it. Yeah, they'd probably be voting with my heart, my head, but it doesn't matter anymore.
I think
one thing I will say, Alex, is that it was an NHL arena, so you did broadcast at an NHL arena.
No, I mean, like, I can't tell people, a current NHL arena.
Yeah, true.
One thing that I think about sometimes is like, I almost it's not obviously the same, but I almost compare like Springfield to Hartford. That side.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
And NHL team would not work in Springfield. It's not going to work back in Hartford, especially when splitting Boston and New York.
Yeah, I think Hartford would have been fine long term if they had stayed, but I think that once they left, just the way the game was going, they weren't going to go back. Kind of same thing with Quebec City. If they'd stuck around for a while and developed this generational fan base that we see a lot of, that we see the Green Bay Packers have, I think it could have worked. But I don't think it was going to work if they left at all. I don't think that the league was going to take a chance on going back there.
What if the Pats had won their 6 Super Bowls playing in Hartford?
Different story. Completely different story.
Give it to them?
Yeah.
They come back? They're probably already back.
Yeah, honestly. I think it would be a different story. I think that Kraft would have brought an NHL team back. So
2 sports teams to no sports teams. They went from the 90s to now. Wow. Yeah. I guess they never had the Pats, but they thought they did.
All right, so we're going to move on to the NBA here. The 2 seed is Seattle. Obviously, they had the Supersonics for a while. They won a championship there. They drafted Kevin Durant, and then the team up and shipped out right before they got really good down in Oklahoma City. So I think that there's a lot of interest in bringing the team back there. They're obviously getting an NHL team now, so there will be a ready arena. There's a fan base. The Supersonics don't exist somewhere else, so they could pick up the Supersonics moniker and kind of bring it back like the old days. Big area, growing, very techie vibe out there. Against Louisville, Josh kind of pointed out the negatives of Louisville. Is just that it's not a major sports town, and it's close to Indiana, so 100 miles I think. So I'm not sure if there's territory rights there for the Pacers. But the positives of Louisville obviously is it's a basketball crazy town. It's a big city, and there's no major professional sports teams there, so they might be able to kind of capture the market. And there's an NBA ready arena that the Louisville Cardinals play in. So we'll go to whoever wants to go first.
I'll go first.
Go ahead, love it.
Because I live in Washington. I can definitely tell you that people here freaking hate the NBA for the most part. Not a lot of people like watch the Blazers or whatever. I'm sure there are some diehards, but most people don't like it. However, if they got a team back, they would immediately be willing to take it up. A lot of them have Supersonics gear, whatever. I know I just kind of wrote that off with the Nordiques, where I'm like, oh, it's just an aesthetic. But I do think it's true. I think the Sonics are an aesthetic, but not necessarily here. I'm nowhere near any of that tech stuff I'm out in the country, and there's Supersonics gear here. So I definitely think there's a fan base that would come right back, and forgive Adam Silver and David Stern for whatever. No, maybe not forgive, but they jump right back.
So who'd you vote for?
Seattle.
Okay.
I mean, so the only reason the Sonics left was because the city wasn't going to put up money to renovate Key Arena, which NHL Seattle just renovated and made sure it was still up to NBA standards. Like that was the only roadblock. I think the Thunder played a preseason game there like 4 or 5 years ago, and they sold out in like 2 minutes. I honestly think
it's right now. So I don't know what's going on, but it's in pieces right now.
Well, yeah, we'll see how long it takes to get it ready. But it's 2020. If there's not an NBA team in Seattle by 2025, I'll be shocked. I really think this is like right around the corner.
Yeah, I can't imagine, especially when you compare it to Louisville. There's so much more of a draw to Seattle. It's ridiculous. And that exactly what you said, Josh, about the NHL team going there and leaving the option for the NBA transformation is massive. And that just leads a wide open door for the NBA to just go back, because there's a lot of other cities that the NBA is in that really aren't doing too hot that could really use another team. Or if they expand, which I really don't think they'll do, Seattle's just waiting. They're waiting for an opening.
Yeah, I mean, the Kings almost moved. They had an official relocation vote for the Kings, was it 5 years ago?
Yeah.
To try to move, and I forget why it failed. I think it was because they didn't have the stadium funding. So, like, it just comes – a lot of these cities, it comes down to the stadium, and it's done now. So, yeah.
All right, so Seattle, clean sweep, no real surprise there on my end. Next one is interesting. Vegas against Vancouver. Obviously, Vancouver had the Grizzlies, and before they moved down to Memphis. I know that Vancouver's a really growing city. The World Cup final was there. The Olympics were there. The Canucks are obviously very popular. I actually read today that there was some, not serious talks, but some preliminary talks about a second professional hockey team in Vancouver. That's how big the city is, and that's how popular sports are there. And with the history of the Grizzlies there, obviously they wouldn't be the Grizzlies anymore. But there's definitely, some interesting expansion options there. And having another team on the western side of Canada could make a difference. Vegas is kind of another slam dunk for the NBA. I think kind of like Seattle. You saw the success that the Golden Knights had, when they made it to the Stanley Cup Finals. Obviously, the Raiders are going to go there, and we're sure they're going to kill it. And a lot of leagues are trying to get into Vegas now, recognizing how popular the area is, and then how many people travel there, and how great it would be for road fans to be able to visit their team in Vegas. So this is an interesting matchup here. We'll go with Michael first because he was last one of the times.
One of the other time.
Yeah.
I am going to go with Vegas here. I just think that, again, it's another ready and waiting possibility to move over there. I would assume that where the Vegas Knights play can be converted into an NBA arena.
I'm sure it was built with the idea.
Right, exactly. And that's what it's going to be a lot of nowadays is especially when teams are sharing the same city, they're going to be sharing the same arena. And I think that Vegas is a very up-and-coming sports area. And I think that obviously fans have bought into the Knights, the Golden Knights, and they're going to buy into the Raiders no matter what. And just throwing a basketball team in there, throwing an NBA team in there would be, to me, absolutely electric. I would love to see that. So it's obviously a good place for tourists to come in and watch their games, and fans of road teams to go watch. Like if the Celtics went to play in Vegas, that would be electric to go watch. I got to go with that over Vancouver. Even though the Vancouver Grizzlies have some of the best throwback uniforms of all time.
Very true.
I'm going to go with Vancouver. So I'm reading a little bit into why the Grizzlies left. A couple reasons. Number one, so they had to collect revenue in Canadian dollars, but they had to pay staff and players in U.S. dollars. And at the time, the exchange rate was terrible, which we talked about already for a different team. So that was part of the reason why. Another part of the reason why a rule at the NBA essentially changed because of the Grizzlies is at the time expansion franchises, their first year were not allowed to have a top 5 pick. And for the subsequent 3 years after they were an expansion team, they were not allowed to have a top 2 pick. So the Grizzlies were not allowed to pick high in the draft or high enough to get what we consider to be a franchise changer. That, and they drafted Steve Francis, who was a very good player, who said, I'm not going to play there. And they kind of got screwed by that. So I look at that. I think that would be a great intercountry rivalry with the Raptors. Obviously, the Raptors have shown from the financial side it's doable. I think Vancouver as a city has made leaps and bounds over the last 15 years to where people actually look at it as a destination instead of what it used to be. I know it's like a huge real estate opportunity for a lot of money coming over from China and Japan. So I think the sponsorship dollars would be there too, especially being on the West Coast. I think Vegas would be great. I know the summer league does well. I'm not sold on it as a professional sports city yet. I know the Knights have done well, but I'm not sold on the Raiders doing well there in terms of fan draw. So I'm going to go with Vancouver. I think they genuinely got screwed by the NBA not allowing them to pick where they should have. So if they were allowed to pick under the new rules now and they actually had a couple good drafts, I think they'd be successful. I think they'd be a great NBA city.
Alex.
It's tough. I think I'm gonna go with Vegas.
Ooh.
So yeah, Vegas. You know, it's a big market. I don't know about how they're gonna support a professional sports team, but yeah, Vancouver definitely is an upcoming city. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean it's ready for a professional sports team. Vegas is kind of an arrived city. It's becoming huge. That's why there's a whole bunch of sports teams there now. So, yeah, I definitely think Vegas is probably the way to go. You can drive there from LA. So, yeah, it's good.
Vegas. Okay. That'll be an interesting matchup in the next round, Seattle against Vegas. Onto the NFL region here. I'm not sure if the NFL will be expanding much in future years. They could potentially move some other teams around, but I can't really see them going above the 32 teams they have right now. But these are some interesting ones. St. Louis against San Antonio. Obviously, we talked about, the Rams were there for a while. They had the great show on turf, but the team wasn't really good. The Edward Jones Dome wasn't really the most eye-catching place to watch a game. That's not to say the Alamo Dome is either, but I think if you go down and put another NFL team in Texas, they're going to succeed no matter what because it's Texas. They're also fairly close to Austin, San Antonio is, and that's another big city that people have looked into for expansion. But obviously they have the University of Texas, so it might be tough to put another stadium in or even compete with Texas football, which is kind of legend down there. But I think it's an interesting potential opportunity, and then against a team that had it for a long time, which would be, St. Louis. And I think the Cardinals were actually in St. Louis too before they went down to Arizona. So there's been a few teams there. Obviously, owners left for greener pastures. But what are you guys thinking here?
Do you know how the Saints did when they played in the Alamo Dome after the hurricane?
They did well.
There's your answer. Honestly, I think the intrigue of having another team, another professional sports team in San Antonio is probably huge right now. Not to mention just it's very big, and St. Louis twice now has had teams come and go, and I think that giving San Antonio a choice would be quite interesting.
Yeah, the Texas market is always interested in football. I feel like San Antonio to the NFL is kind of like what Oklahoma City was for a long time to the NBA. San Antonio's just been trying to get a city. I mean, just been trying to get a team for the city. And, yeah, if they got one, I think it would explode. St. Louis, I already kind of said in the other one why I'm not really a huge fan of that. Why I voted for San Diego against it. So I'm going for San Antonio.
Josh, any opinions?
I think San Antonio would crush it. There's a lot of corporate money coming into A&M now that they've become a bigger sport program. Niddle, you and I went there. Absolutely beautiful. I loved it down there. Football is king. I think the Raiders almost went there. San Antonio almost got them over Vegas. I think an NFL team in San Antonio would blow up. It'd be maybe a better market than Houston for them, to be honest with you.
That might be a hot take.
I really don't think it is.
Market in the country.
Yeah, but how well do the Texans actually draw? I don't think it's good. I don't think it's crazy.
Well,
I don't think they're sold out.
We'll see.
That's
a conversation for another day.
It's such a hot
Texas football markets. All right, so San Antonio, clean sweep moves on. We'll face the winner of an interesting matchup here that is not, not two cities that people talk about a lot. Omaha, Nebraska is, middle of the country. Omaha's a big city. The College World Series are there. Creighton draws very well in the arena across the street. And then the U.S. swimming trials also take place there. And I know the NCAA tournaments there quite a bit. So it's an interesting city. Nebraska does not have a professional sports team. Obviously, University of Nebraska football is very popular, but Nebraska itself doesn't have a Big Four. So they could potentially draw in people from all around the state. It's obviously a big city, a cool city to visit, and it would be somewhat of a central location for all teams to get to. Montreal is in here twice, actually. I always thought that the NFL could potentially expand into Canada. And Montreal is the city that makes the most sense. They draw the most fans for the CFL. They averaged, I think, only 17,000 fans, which would obviously go way up if the NFL was there. But the city itself fits what the NFL is trying to appeal to, which is young men who like to drink beer and go to certain clubs that take place up there. And I think that depending on the league they're in, if they were put in the AFC East with New England, New York, and Buffalo, that you would get thousands of visiting fans up there that make trips there every year, and they might not need to rely on local fans to fill the stadium for the first few years while they build out a fan base. So it's an interesting one. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts.
For me, I'm gonna go with Montreal here. I think that the point of already having teams there is probably huge. First of all, having the CFL there, it would ruin the CFL team. So it's a matter of if they have the loyalty to not bring one in, or if they want to bring in an NFL team and kick out their CFL team. They obviously have the fan base for football. They obviously have fan base in general for sports as a whole, for professional sports, which is a huge plus over what Omaha has, which is nothing. They don't have a sports team or professional sports team. They don't have a stadium that can hold a professional sports team right now in the NFL. And Montreal has had it in the past, and obviously has the CFL stadium and can build a new one, and already has the fan interest there. So I'm going to go with Montreal.
I'm going to go with Omaha.
Ooh.
Omaha.
Just because you could say Omaha?
No, not just because. So Montreal, the Montreal Alouettes are the most popular CFL team. So yeah, I just feel like taking a city, I would say trying to find the Cleveland of the CFL might be better because the Alouettes, are they good? Does anybody
I didn't
know?
do that much research. I looked into who had the highest attendance, and like I said, I think Montreal of all the cities fits the NFL's target market the best.
Right. No, I understand that. So what I'm saying is, would they want to go somewhere where, the team is already good, or would you want to go somewhere that wants a team that's good, but their CFL team sucks?
Yeah,
So
I mean that's interesting. I'm not sure if the
I don't know.
CFL has a team like that. Like it's so
Neither do
hockey
I.
heavy. Yeah,
I don't know anything about the Montreal Alouettes. Quick little. They have some great Cup wins in the 2000s. Okay, that's not too bad. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. 2010, the last time they won. It doesn't seem like they're starved for pro football success. It kind of seems like the NFL would be like infringing, like it would just be a bad combo. I don't think Omaha's a good option, but I think it just kind of has to win by default because I don't think putting an NHL team in Montreal is a good idea.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Omaha as well. I don't think Canada really wants anything to do with the NFL. I really don't. The CFL does great up there. Omaha is a smaller city, but we see how much they've embraced the sports they have. Geographically, it would unlock probably the last spot in the country that the NFL doesn't have, which is the Iowa, Montana, middle part of the country above Texas. And I'm not saying there's a lot of people there, but they could grab them. And then I think you could also start up a great rivalry with Kansas City, and Denver's not that far away either. I think it's a long shot. I think both of these are long shots, but I would say Omaha would be a lot better than Montreal because I just don't think Montreal wants the NFL. I really don't.
Yeah, those were two that are interesting. I didn't want to just add 3 teams. I didn't want to do San Antonio and 3 teams that just lost teams. I wanted to try and diversify it. Omaha made sense based on geography and the fact that Nebraska didn't have a team. And I thought that if the NFL was going to expand into Canada, that Montreal would be the spot. So that's why I put them in there. But we move on to the regional finals for each of the 4 major sports. We go back up to the MLB, the 1 seed we just talked about, Montreal. Obviously, had the Expos there for about 35 years. Really, the big thing holding them back right now, I think, is the fact that they need a stadium. They looked into it years ago. It looks pretty good, but it didn't come to fruition. Obviously, Olympic Stadium is just too big and too old to play in, and it's kind of impossible to take down without either creating a mushroom cloud over the city or putting in about $2 billion worth of renovations against Charlotte. We'll try to speed this up. We all know about it, but does the MLB go up to Canada again, or do they go to the Carolinas in a baseball-heavy area of the country?
Montreal.
Easily Montreal. I think that's just such a historic place for the Expos, and I think the fan base would absolutely love it.
Yeah, I was going to go Charlotte, but it's Montreal. Moving on.
Interesting. All right, NHL. Pretty much the 2 complete opposites here. For the hockey purists, they would probably say Hamilton because it's in Canada. There's probably stronger hockey fans, more of a base up there. Money-wise, it would probably make sense to go to Houston, a big market, expand the game down more into the state of Texas. So for the NHL final, are you going purity up in Hamilton where they will embrace hockey and it is pretty much all they do all the time? Or do we go down to Houston and kind of chase money and chase the growth of the sport, which is what's gotten Gary Bettman booed at the Stanley Cup presentation every year for about 20 years?
Levitt, I'm interested to hear your thoughts first on this.
Yeah.
I'm going Hamilton, just for the exact reasons that Stromsky said. Like, I just don't think Houston, are they another Arizona Coyotes waiting to happen?
I'm going to go Houston. Mike, you're going to be the tiebreaker here. I'm going to go Houston. Hamilton built a new arena, I think 7 years ago, and the NHL has not even batted an eye at them. It's way too close to Toronto. It's way too close to Buffalo. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. Houston checks every single box for me. I think it'd be a great move for the NHL. I don't think Gary cares if he gets booed if it means he's growing the sport and making more money.
I think the purist in me is just going to go with Hamilton because of the fact that that's more of the home area and the factor of I think it belongs more in Canada and give them another team rather than the Arizona Coyotes thing kind of really turned my mind up because I understand that it would have Dallas near them, but it would be tough to add another Southern hockey team when we know that a lot of the hockey interest is up from the north.
Interesting. From the first four to the final four, a little bit of VTU action there. We'll go to the NBA's final region here, Seattle against Vegas. Obviously, we've talked about this. Seattle had the Supersonics. They still have kind of a thirst for the Supersonics themselves. I think that they would quickly forgive the NBA for leaving against Vegas, who does not have a team right now and is still proving itself as a market. But right now, it seems like the NBA is seriously considering moving to Vegas. Josh, we'll start with you because I think I know where you're voting on this one.
The only thing against Seattle was not having an arena, and they have it now. So Seattle.
Seattle in a landslide.
Okay. Alex, too?
Yes, Seattle definitely can support a team.
Okay. All right, I think this one is also going to be a landslide just based on the way you guys reacted to the other one. NFL final, San Antonio against Omaha.
Do we have to vote? I mean, I think we know.
You just got to say it.
Omaha.
San Antonio. Are you kidding me?
I just wanted to say Omaha. I'm going San Antonio.
All right, so we're on to the final four. I think we got about around 15 minutes left here, so we can talk a little bit more about this, but we'll still get through it pretty quickly. MLB, two Canadian teams here, actually. MLB moving to Montreal, a very nostalgic pick, but also a potential very smart pick. I think that in the mid-'90s, if the Expos didn't lose that season to the lockout, that they would have kind of continued on their run of winning, and they might have had a better history and a different ending there. So I think if there's success, they will support a team there, and obviously you're expanding into a huge city in Canada and growing the sport up there. Against Hamilton, probably the most likely NHL city in Canada right now that would host a team. But obviously we've talked about the shortfalls, just the location and everything. So do we think, the MLB goes to Canada and Montreal, or do we think that, hockey and the frozen ponds up there gets another team in Hamilton? I'll go Alex here first.
I think. I mean, Hamilton would definitely be more of a slam dunk. Montreal probably should have one, though, which is the name of the bracket. So, because, I mean, I totally agree with you. They got robbed in 94, and they should have the team now. So,
that's where this gray area is coming back
exactly
to
where I voted. But I think, in my opinion, like Montreal should have a team. Hamilton, there you go.
So Montreal?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to go Hamilton.
No, sorry, Hamilton. No, not Montreal. Hamilton.
Okay.
I just spent like 5 minutes saying why I'm not going for Montreal. Sorry.
Okay.
You were asking me like a trick question or something.
All right.
Yeah, I'm going to go Hamilton as well.
Wow.
I'm just going based off of what's better for the sport. If MLB went back to Montreal and it failed, which it could, that would be devastating for MLB. If an NHL team went to Hamilton, I think it would be more likely to succeed it would be like a middle tier revenue generator. I'm not going to say it's going to be a home run, but it's got more of a likelihood to succeed and the NHL would prosper. Versus if Hamilton failed, I mean, what's failure for a Canadian NHL team? Like the NHL would be fine. So just based off of that and based off of the fact that we're still waiting for Montreal to get it together, putting a stadium together. We're still waiting for MLB to show any support behind that whatsoever. And I know this was a thing when the Expos moved. We'll see if it still is. the Quebec sovereignty movement was a factor for MLB when the Expos left in '94. We'll see. I don't know if that's still an issue, but I look at all that. It just comes down to the impact on their sport. Hamilton, if it succeeds, will be a home run. If it fails, it's probably still a double for NHL. If Montreal succeeds, probably a double. If it fails, it'd be catastrophic for MLB. So Hamilton.
All right, that'll do you. I was going to go Montreal, but
All right, so Hamilton all the way to the finals. Did not really expect that, but just shows the power of hockey in Canada. These are two. This is going to be a tough one. Two slam dunks. The NBA to Seattle. Like Josh said, they have the arena, they have the history, they have the brand. They would be able to pick up the Supersonics brand right away. They have a fan base. They'd have a natural rival in the Trailblazers, and they have a history. So going there would make quite a bit of sense. And if the NFL went to San Antonio, they flirted with it before the Alamo Dome was built with an NFL team in mind. I'm sure that they do some renovations to it, but San Antonio is a great city. Texas is football crazy. An NFL team there would be highly, highly successful. What do you think would be more successful, NBA in Seattle or NFL in San Antonio?
This should be the finals right here, to be honest.
It's a tough one.
I thought this was going to be more clear cut than it actually is.
Again, it kind of brings up like the title, like I was saying in the last one, which I did kind of say Montreal is the one that should, but at the same time, the way we've been voting, it would be voting for Hamilton. So in this one, I kind of think they're the same. I kind of think that Seattle is both more likely, and it should. So I don't necessarily think that it's kind of like as tough a question as the last one, because I think it's both. I think both it's more likely and the nostalgia's there too.
I am just going to stick with my gut. I'm going to go with Seattle. I think that as Levitt said, the nostalgia has still been there. Obviously, the team would sell well with the factor of the history that the team has. And fans, even though they don't want to watch the NBA right now, they will watch it when it gets there. Not to mention, they already have one of the best WNBA teams there. And this just adding on to more basketball there. So I'm going to go with Seattle.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I would go Seattle. This one's really, really tough, but it just comes to there's got to be other reasons why the NFL hasn't made it to San Antonio yet that we're not thinking of. And I just double checked to make sure that that's exactly what it was. Literally the only reason why the Sonics left was because they could not get funding for a new arena. They sued for the funding, they did everything, and they couldn't get it, and that's why they left. So I have to think if the city kicked in some money, they're still there. They probably have a title at this point, so it's got to be Seattle.
All right, so Seattle moves on to the championship. Heavy favorite in terms of history, nostalgia, and just a fan base against. I think, like Josh said, the interesting thing about Hamilton is that a Canadian hockey team, a failure for them is still probably a mid-level revenue generator for the NHL. And I know that Canada probably wants another hockey team back. It's been almost 30 years since one of them won the Stanley Cup. But do they stack up against the NBA going back to Seattle?
The thing with having Seattle go back is it's also not interfering with another NBA team. With Hamilton being there, it would also interfere with Buffalo and Toronto. So I think that putting Seattle back in its place, for me, it's just a perfect should, and I would love to see it happen.
Anyone else?
I'm just trying to look into why the Kings deal move to Seattle fell apart. Yeah, we're gonna have to cut this out. Still looking.
Let's see. That's a bad argument. I just spent a long time researching an argument that I'm not going to weaken my case. I'm just kidding. All right, so I am going to go with Seattle here. Honestly, I'm just overthinking this because realistically, like I said at the beginning, there's like grassroots out here, even where I live out here in the country, for Seattle basketball. If it was to come back, it would be huge. I think it'd be a huge hit. There's absolutely no reason that Hamilton wouldn't be, but Seattle is a huge market if you can get it to work. And I think that everybody here pretty much wants it to work if the NBA was willing to come back.
Yeah, Seattle. I was also trying to read into it too much and try to find a reason not to say Seattle. I think Hamilton would be a good NHL city, and I think they would make money. They are not a guaranteed home run, as we talked about with the location and territorial rights. Seattle, going back to the NBA, is a home run. That team will make money hand over fist. Fans will show up immediately, and they are literally only not there because Seattle didn't kick in money to refurbish Key Arena. They will be back in the next 5 years. I don't know if a team moves. I don't know if it's expansion. I think it's expansion, most likely, but it's got to be Seattle.
All right, so Seattle takes the cake in this one. We want the Supersonics, back in the NBA. I think that was an interesting one because there was a lot of different routes you can go, and there was a lot of different ways you can interpret it. I think that in terms of cities that should still have teams, if you want to go like that, I think Hartford and Quebec City should have NHL teams. They could be somewhat like a Green Bay, the smaller city still supporting the team that they love, but obviously the NHL wanted to move out of there. So it's interesting they both lost in the first round. Montreal is one that makes a lot of sense for the MLB. I think like the only reason they haven't moved back there is a stadium. And I wrote a paper about it. I'm sure Josh probably knows and Alex probably knows. Maybe Mike's the only one that doesn't. Is that taking down Olympic Stadium would either create a mushroom cloud over the city, like if they did it with a wrecking ball, similar to 9/11 in New York, or it would cost in the billions of dollars to take it down piece by piece. Which is part of the reason why it's not back there. But like you said, not a guaranteed home run. Mexico City is an interesting one. Vegas in the NBA is really interesting, but again, like we're still learning about it. And then the NFL is interesting because there's really not a lot of expansion opportunities. It's just would a team move there? And the NFL is kind of so strong right now that it's only a couple teams that might be moving from city to city. But I like the fact that a Canadian hockey team made it to the finals because I think that more hockey teams should be in Canada because they care a lot more about it up there than we do down here. Any final thoughts? I think that was a good one. There wasn't a clear winner, although Seattle swept its way to a championship.
I agree. I think that the factor of that most of these matchups cause actual thought rather than being clear, obvious answers. So good work, Tom.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, no, I when I first looked at it, I was like, Hamilton, are you kidding me? Omaha?
And then you voted
what are you
to
doing?
the championship.
And then you actually look at them and there are compelling arguments. And it's also a good reminder of like which cities should be next. Like I forgot how strong of an NFL case San Antonio has. And it's a shame because I think the only team that'll realistically move in the next few years is the Jags, and they are earmarked for London when they figure out how to make that work logistically. So it's a shame that they're not going to get their NFL chance anytime soon. But
they could. I think London will not happen just because of I don't think teams will from the West Coast will want to send them there, and I think that could open up the door for San Antonio.
It's possible,
But would you want to be called the San Antonio Jaguars? It would probably be the San Antonio Alamos, something like that.
Something like that, and it's just a wonderful city. But yeah, I really like this one. This is a good one.
Yeah, love it. You only froze out for a few minutes.
Yeah, definitely. This is a very good bracket. Very, very tough decisions to make throughout. So that pretty much means it was a good one.
Yeah. What was your argument against him or against Seattle? I just want to hear it. You said it was bad.
I was trying to look up I was trying to make the case that there were not that many people in Canada, but then there were more people people than I thought. There's still not very many people in Canada, but
Yeah.
there were not so little that it made my point very good. So,
Gotcha. All right. All right, boys. Good talk, and
Good
we'll
work.
talk. We'll talk like next week.
yep.
Sounds like a
All right.
bet.
Stay safe. Everyone keep their jobs, or don't
Or not.
get fired if you're already furloughed. Don't get furloughed if you're not furloughed yet.
Words of wisdom.